You've just had the good fortune or misfortune to see that wonderful piece of film that brings back memories to me. The Mud in the Face. How they rehearsed that mud in the face. How they looked with glee as they were ready to throw the mud. It was only about a couple of inches away from my face. I knew it was going to come. I couldn't do anything about it, but sure enough, took it full in the face. Beautiful aim. Everybody enjoyed it enormously. I think perhaps secretly I did too. But the youth club films have many memories for me. I distinctly remember pulling up at a petrol station in a car that was dressed up as an SS staff car. All of us were dressed up as Gestapo agents or something like this. The petrol attendant eventually came out, sauntered up to the car, took one look at us and said, is this a fancy dress party or something? No, film. Ah, you're one of those film crew units, are you? Yes, that's the idea, we said. He was most interested. I'm surprised we didn't get free petrol, but anyhow, we moved on from there. And filming, well, it wasn't quite the style that perhaps Hollywood is used to. When you ran out of money, the colour seemed to disappear, and all of a sudden it went into black and white, and occasionally I think it's gone into sepia and white now. The film quality wasn't perhaps all that it might have been. Youth clubs, well, they weren't all filmmaking, and there was a serious side to it. And we had an organisation, a meeting that we decided to call Conflab. I suppose we thought that was quite a good name for it. Conflab was an excuse to talk about anything that mattered, anything that affected the world, anything that affected just a small group of people. I suspect that for some it was a case of going and visiting each other's houses and seeing what sort of biscuits they had. That was quite important, I seem to remember. But from time to time we did get to nitty-gritty issues of morality and well, I don't know, I'd have to dig around a bit to think about what we did talk about. They seemed pretty important things to us at the time. Perhaps we would be talking about blacks in the community, things that were so new to us then, and it was good to chat around about it. We had a meeting after church on Sunday night. I seem to remember that for a short period at least I was inviting speakers to come along and chat to us about all manner of things. People were very willing to talk to us. It seemed to be no trouble to fill the gaps and get somebody to talk about some visit to a foreign country perhaps, all sorts of things. Sunday afternoons were most enjoyable. Often we'd organise somebody to give us a lift. It's amazing how many people you can get into a car if you really needed to, and we go off on some country road and end up at a little church. Usually our number was sufficient to double or quadruple the number of people in the congregation. We'd have a jolly good time. I think we learnt something about how other people worshipped. There was the sort of chap that would stand up and shout out, "Hallelujah!" And perhaps we hadn't met that before at Park Lane Church, but it was good to see it, and we had quite a few surprises in store for us. Mind you, some of the congregations had quite a few surprises in store for them. There was the guitars, and I don't think too many guitars had been seen in some of those churches. But we enjoyed ourselves. Often we out for a tea on a Sunday afternoon. Perhaps we get invited to the manse. But generally it would be a case of a picnic, thoroughly enjoyable. One occasion we were out at one of these small country churches, and everybody was looking round and saying, where's Sue? Isn't she doing something in this service? And everybody thought about it and decided that yes, Sue perhaps ought to have been there, and she should have been doing a section of the service. I think we were doing it on faith, hope and love. And I think we were missing a bit of love on that occasion. So it was a case of getting our heads together about half an hour before the service and working something out pretty quickly. I suppose if you want to think about something that's quite degrading, I had to dress up as Janet from Dr. Finley's Casebook and perform that wonderful sequence where she answers the phone and it's Arden House, eh? And I couldn't do it then either, I don't think, but it didn't seem to matter. Everybody was very understanding in those sort of miscellaneous organisations that we had, generally speaking called shows. It was an excuse for all manner of things. A lot of the scripts that we wrote ourselves, I don't think they would stand up too well today, even on Channel 4. I suppose the other thing was the midnight communion, when we'd been out carol singing. We'd been out carol singing from, say about 8 o'clock. We usually stopped somewhere for the non-alcoholic ginger wine and whatever else we could manage to persuade people to give us. And we'd arrive back at church when we decided it probably wasn't fair to be singing, especially in the way we were doing, carols outside people's homes. And we'd sit around in the church buildings. Somebody would decide, well, perhaps we ought to count up the money. And we'd count it up and it would be, I don't know, £19.17 and twopence. And we decided you couldn't leave it at £19.17 and twopence. Let's get it up to £20. So everybody would toss in a few pennies or whatever they happened to have in their pocket. And sure enough, you got £20, 1 and threepence. And then it was a long haul to see if you could get it up to £21, and so it went on, and we raised quite a lot of money that way, I suppose. And this would go on till the midnight communion service started, whatever time that was, and that must have been the limiting factor on how much money we raised on these occasions, I think. I always remember being deafened by Mr. Loy. If you happened to be sitting in any of the front pews, Mr. Loy's voice managed to penetrate. I think it was before the days of amplifiers, and you certainly didn't need an amplifier with his voice. It reached the back of the hall and came all the way back to the front as well, I think. There was a Park Lane tennis club, which not too many people will remember, I don't suppose. I think it largely predated my time, but I came along at a time when the tennis club was meeting at Ham Park and played for a couple of years, and it was a church organisation, because I do remember having a church meeting, and I'm trying to remember, I think it was Mr. Hopper, Reverend Hopper, who was presiding in the meeting, and we started with prayers and we had our meeting about the continuation of the tennis club. And only got down to 4 people. It was pretty difficult to keep the tennis club going, but I think we managed to survive a pretty sticky period. And eventually it died out. I assume it died out when the age group that I grew up with all left to, or mostly left, to go to college and university, which was quite a point in our lives, because we'd been a very close group of people in the youth club. And we usually met at holiday time, when we finished with college or university for a summer holiday or an Easter holiday. And I seem to remember we used to end up playing 10-pin bowling most of the time when we were back from college.